Counsel, are you ready to proceed?
Yes, sir.
All right. Just give our attorney Valdez a quick minute here. Good evening, everyone. At this time, I'll open the hearing. This is a liquor license control or liquor license revocation hearing. I'm Village President Gary LaRue. I'm also the local liquor commissioner. Tonight's hearing will be, we're here to hear evidence and testimony based on regarding incidents and events that occurred at SVN Live and the early morning hours of October 31st, 2021, and the events that led up to that night. And that's all we'll be hearing tonight for this hearing. We have Attorney Valdez here as the village attorney and also the prosecutor for the village. Deputy Clerk Clackey up here will be recording the meeting, and we also have the hearing being video recorded by John. To my left over here is Trustee Crowley is the liaison to our police department. With that said, I will turn the hearing over to Attorney Valdez.
Okay. Good evening, Commissioner. Tonight we are here because on the evening of October 31st, 2021, at SVN Live in the village of Midlothian, Morgan Brown, a 19-year-old who had consumed alcohol at the establishment, was shot dead outside the establishment. In addition to that, the village will present evidence that SVN Live was aware that Ms. Brown was underage, that the holder of the license, Andrew Borders, was aware of or had reason to know that he had a minor on the premises consuming alcohol, which resulted in her death. In addition, the village will present evidence to the effect that SVN Live had armed security guards on the premises, outside the premises, who were not licensed by the Illinois Department of Professional Regulation, also in violation of state law. At the conclusion of the evidence, the village will request that the liquor license number 15216 be permanently revoked.
Mr. Mayor, council, members of the public, actually a matter of procedure that I would like to initially raise, and that is, you may recall, Mr. Mayor, that when we were last here 2 weeks ago, I had filed a motion for discovery, witness list, and rules of procedure. The village prosecutor has been very professional and has been very helpful in providing me with documentation in response to my motion for discovery, witness list, and rules of procedure, and, you know, dotting the i's and crossing the t's and making sure I did my job, I also filed freedom of information requests with the Village of Midlothian. And with respect to my freedom of information requests that were filed timely, sir, we requested regarding SVN Live Inc.'s business and liquor license revocation proceedings, any and all emails, police reports, including inventories, laboratory reports, witness statements, or summaries, or non-police reports, documents, statements, photographs, video, audio recordings within the control of the prosecuting attorney, police department, or mayor's office that pertain to the allegations contained in the charging notice governing these proceedings. We also, Your Honor, requested by FOIA, Freedom of Information request, any information pertaining to the allegations that could be helpful to the licensee's defense, any written orders of disposition relating to the licensee SVN Live Inc. And let me stop there for a moment, Your Honor. Regarding the item, any written orders of disposition relating to the licensee SVN Live Inc., I have not received anything from the village prosecutor or anything from the Village of Midlothian in response to this request, which leads me to believe that there is no prior disciplinary history against the licensee SVN Live Inc., because if there was prior disciplinary history, I would suppose that the village prosecutor or the Village of Midlothian would have provided me the prior disciplinary history. I have received none, so therefore I'm going to assume that there is no prior disciplinary history. If I am to be corrected, then I'll be corrected, but I have not received any disciplinary history. I also requested, Mr. Mayor, copies of all documents and exhibits that will be used or submitted at the hearing or to refresh witness recollection. I believe the village prosecutor has provided me with same, and the names of all witnesses and a summary of their testimony pertaining to the SVN Live Inc.'s business and liquor license revocation proceedings. On that point, Mr. Mayor, a summary of testimony pertaining to the witnesses, I have not received any summary of anticipated testimony, and I would make objection on that grounds. I also requested a copy of the rules of procedure, which the village prosecutor did provide me, and I also requested, and this I think here becomes a point of contention, I also requested in my Freedom of Information request any information regarding the murder of Mr. Tyree Riles in the parking lot of licensee establishment Slapshots, and that I should be provided with copies of all police reports. I did receive a police report, one police report regarding the murder of Mr. Tyree Riles, and I also requested any notices of business and liquor license fines, suspension, and revocation order disciplinary results and settlement agreements pertaining to the murder of Tyree Riles and pertaining to how this village instituted or didn't institute disciplinary proceedings, fines, suspensions, or revocations against Slapshots for the murder of Tyree Riles, which according to the police report that was provided to me, Mr. Riles, God rest his soul, died in the parking lot of Slapshots. While I have received one police report regarding the murder of Mr. Tyree Riles at the licensee establishment Slapshots, I was advised by the village prosecutor a few moments ago that there was no fine issued against Slapshots regarding that unfortunate incident, nor was there any suspension of Slapshots business or liquor license, nor was there any revocation order entered against Slapshots.
Thank you. Your Honor, I would check that is not the content of the conversation I had with counsel. He's mistaken. In fact, I explained to him that Slapshots did in fact receive it's not relevant to this proceeding. Just to correct the point, did receive a suspension, and I never said either that the slap shots bar did not receive a fine. So that's just simply a correction. But again, the village is conscious to allow counsel to make his defense. It's our position that the events at slap shots had nothing to do with the death of Morgan Brown on October 31st, nor the fact that there were armed, unlicensed security guards.
But I did request in my Freedom of Information request any copy of a fine, any copy of a suspension order, or any copy of a revocation order pertaining to slap shots. And Your Honor, the reason why I requested that particular set of documents is because I'm sure, sir, you are aware that there are two macro-level issues at play here in these proceedings. One macro-level issue is the village prosecutor going to meet his burden of proof regarding the charges that are contained in the notice of suspension order, charges, and hearing? And the second issue that comes up, Your Honor, is penalty. And there is a wide body of case law in the state of Illinois that provides that a penalty should not be unduly harsh, nor should there be any sort of unconstitutional, unharsh penalty against one establishment versus another establishment, especially when you consider that at slap shots, whose license has not been revoked, the murder took place in its parking lot, whereas the incident here did not take place on SBN property, nor did it take place in SBN parking lot. So I believe that based on case law, if hypothetically you were to find in favor of the prosecution, and if at such a situation, you then have a responsibility, an obligation, and a duty under the law to be fair and reasonable with respect to penalty that is issued, if any penalty is issued at all. And one way to determine whether any penalty issued by this tribunal is in fact fair and reasonable is to look at similar situations. That's why I've requested a copy of any fine order, any suspension order, any revocation order pertaining to the slap shots murder of Tyree Riles. I haven't received any order of fine, haven't received any suspension order, haven't received any revocation order.
Again, I have to interject. I don't typically interrupt the counsel's opening statement, but counsel did receive the settlement order from slap shots to the extent it has any relevance whatsoever to this proceeding. I just want to correct for the record that counsel did receive an order, settlement order between the owner of slap shots and the liquor commissioner suspending their license. That's what the order that existed on them.
Right, but I think there's an issue regarding dates, okay? The village prosecutor is correct, Your Honor. I do have a copy provided by the village prosecutor, thank you, sir, of a decision, findings, and order pertaining to slap shots. That appears to be dated January the 29th, 2021. That's the date on the first page of this decision, findings, and order. And it was signed by you, Gary LaRue. Did I pronounce your name right?
No. LaRue.
LaRue, sorry. Gary LaRue, entered on January 28th, 2021. And Mr. Tyree Riles was murdered on February 20th, 2021 or thereabouts. So the decision that I have, that the front page says January the 29th, 2021, with your signature of an order entered on January the 28th, 2021, was entered prior to the murder of Mr. Tyree Riles. So I don't have a copy of any fine order, suspension order or revocation order pertaining to slap shots and pertaining to the murder of Tyree Riles on Slap Shots property. And I'm requesting those orders if they exist.
Village will stipulate that Slap Shots receive a 2-week suspension and a fine for the activities the council speaks of. And again, to the extent that it's relevant to today's proceedings.
As I stated at the beginning of the hearing, this is a hearing for evident incidents that occurred at SVN Live on the early morning hours of October 31st. And we are here to hear evidence and testimony regarding those incidents and what led up to those incidents. And that is all we are here to hear tonight. So, are you done with your open statement,
Yes,
Council?
sir. Thank you.
Committee Valdez?
Yes. The village will call Officer John Strabone.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Officer, will you restate your name for the record, please?
Detective Schiavone, SCHAVONE.
Detective, what is your position to Village of Midlothian?
I'm an investigator.
Okay, pursuant to your responsibilities with the Village of Midlothian, did you have an occasion to be on the premises of SVN Live on October 31st, 2021?
Yes.
And what was your purpose for being there?
A bar detail that we currently have in the room.
Okay. And why was there a bar detail at SVN Live on that particular evening, if you know?
It's actually for all the bars, not specifically one, just because of all the incidents we've been having at the bars here in town.
Okay. And on that evening, what, if anything, occurred that was unusual or remarkable?
I got to the bar around 2 o'clock in the morning. The bar was clearing out probably about 2:35-ish, give or take. I was speaking with one of the security guards in the back part of the parking lot towards 147th Street. I was facing south, so the bar was behind me. And he tells, "Did you hear that? It sounded like a gunshot." I said, "I didn't hear it." And we kind of both started looking around. We didn't see nothing. Then we started talking again. He says, "That's gunshots." He heard some more. We started looking around. And I exited onto 147th Street in the vehicle. And I made a right onto Kilpatrick. I couldn't see much because both roads were lined with vehicles, and then there was a white SUV in front of me. And as I was able to get closer, there was a lot of people out there with like security guards with flashlights saying, pointing me to the direction down the street. At that point, I called out, "I'm investigating shots fired" call. The white vehicle got out of my way, and I was able to see several security guards and I don't know if there's other people, definitely security guards. And I seen deceased victim, Chris Brown. There was another female that was shot also standing out there, and then another friend with other people, and the deceased and their friend were in the roadway.
Did you proceed to investigate the circumstances surrounding the shooting?
Yes, it did.
Okay. And did you come to determine who the victim of the shooting was?
Yes,
And who was that victim?
Morgan Brown. And she's one that's deceased. And there was also technically 2 more, which would be Harry Bransford, who was struck to survive, and Keela was the other friend that was there, but she ran in the shooting.
Were you able to determine the age of the victim?
Objection. That calls for a fact, not an evidence.
The rules of evidence are relaxed for this proceeding, Commissioner, and certainly the officer investigating the scene of the crime is allowed to testify as to how he found it. Do you want a foundation?
Overruled. This is a hearing, not a trial, so let's keep it to that.
Did you come to find out the age of the shooting victim?
Yes.
And how did you do that?
My sergeant was also on the scene, and going to the scene, he located a purse inside one of the victim's vehicles, which had her ID, her ID.
And what was the determination based upon that ID that you found in the victim's purse?
Objection, the witness testified that it was his sergeant that found the ID.
That the sergeant found the ID. Sergeant,
Valente.
and what did Sergeant Valente's inquiry into the identification of the victim?
Objection calls for hearsay.
Again, this is a administrative proceeding, and maybe some other time there will be a criminal prosecution, hopefully, for the person who ended the life of this 19-year-old girl. But tonight, we're just trying to determine who she was and how old she was, pursuant to the rules of administrative adjudication.
Right, and while I realize, Mr. Prosecutor, that the rules of evidence, and in particular, the rules on hearsay, are relaxed in an administrative proceeding, relaxation of the rules does not mean that there are no rules whatsoever. And unless there's a foundation laid that this particular witness actually looked at the ID himself, any testimony of this witness about what some other person told him he saw on an ID is it's patently unfair, it's hearsay, and it's unreliable.
We'll stand on our response that this is an administrative proceeding. If the council wants a further foundation, Detective Schiavone, would there be another means that you would have privy to Miss Morgan's age?
Yes.
And what would that be?
I was the lead investigator on it, and her name and date of birth and everything was in my report, which I'm able to see it.
Okay, so pursuant to that, you did run her driver's license, or were aware of her driver's license being run?
Objection, leading.
Okay, you may answer the question.
I did not run it myself, but yes, I was able to see all her information from somebody that had ran it.
Okay, in the course of drafting your report, you became aware of what her age was.
Yes.
And what was her age?
Objection, foundation.
I just gave a foundation.
Same objection, foundation.
Overruled.
19.
19 years old. Okay. Okay, in the course of your investigation, did you speak with employees of SVN Live?
I did not.
You did not, okay. What happened after you determined who Morgan Brown was and her age? The scene of the shooting.
Well, I activated task force where I had anywhere up to 20 detectives come on the system and everything. So we all had various jobs that we do throughout. Throughout, I was able to speak with the third victim who was not struck and learned they were all in the bar.
Objection, hearsay, that's unreliable testimony. I have no opportunity to cross-examine this person to whom the officer is testifying about.
And you won't have an opportunity to cross-examine Morgan Brown either, because she's dead. This is an administrative proceeding. Morgan Brown can't speak for herself. Detective is expressing what he viewed, what he personally saw, and excited utterances of individuals who were there at the scene of a horrific killing.
And I'm assuming, again, I'm assuming that I received a police report. Police report 21 M027512, which is the police report that was provided to me in discovery pertaining to this incident. On page 1 of this police report, I see that Detective Chabon is a responding officer, along with someone named Wright, W-R-I-G-H-T, and Valente, and Correa. And I carefully read this police report, the only police report that I received pertaining to the incident. And when I read this police report, there's language in the police report that claims that they were at the bar, but there's nothing in the police report that specifically says that it was SVN bar. So unless the witness has some sort of a photographic memory, I'm assuming he's testifying based off of his recollections, but also based off of him reviewing the one police report that I received. And in the police report that I received, it doesn't specifically say that the decedent was at SVN bar, just a bar. So unless there's some other police report that I didn't receive, I find this line of inquiry still objectionable.
And also, you have the witness right before you. I presume you're going to cross-examine. We're going to be here a very long time. If you continue to object to foundational questions, and questions with regard to what an officer at the scene experienced and witnessed himself.
Overruled.
Going back to where we were, what did you hear and see at the time of the shooting of Morgan Brown at SVN Live?
Once we were able to, the two victims that were struck were transported, I was able to locate a third witness, victim. I spoke with her, and throughout my investigation, I learned that the three of them went to 7 Live. The deceased knew somebody that worked there, and they were allowed to skip the line and get inside the bar. That they were drinking inside. The one I spoke to advised that the other two were being Morgan and Carrie were more intoxicated than she was, and that they had left the bar and that's what took place.
Pursuant to your investigation of the evening or the morning of October 31st, did you request the video evidence that SVN Live had?
Yes, it did. One of the investigators got it as requested and received.
Okay, and did you actually see it?
Some of it, yes.
Okay, and specifically to the charges and the purpose of this hearing today, did you witness any armed guards from SVN? Oh, I'm sorry. Did you witness the owner, Andrew Borders, within the bar in that video? Okay, I'm sorry. Strike that. The DJ in the bar.
Yes, who I later learned the DJ was, yes.
Okay. Do you know who he was?
Through my investigation, I learned. At the time, I did not. That night, I did not.
Okay, all right. And so did you witness an interaction between that DJ and Morgan Brown?
I did.
Okay, and that was on the video?
Yes.
Okay.
Objection. I did not receive this video. I received a 26-second video of shortly after
All of the video that I have, and I timestamps with remarks where you'll see what we're about.
that's in the 20-second, the same video with the 26-second video.
Hours long video.
Well, take it. And counsel will take that as an objection.
Hold on, I want to just check my email because I don't.
You can check your email anytime you want.
I don't
Right
recall-
now,
I don't
we're going to
recall
go
receiving-
forward with the video,
Correct. I don't recall receiving that.
and that's
video.
okay. You can object to it.
I object.
Okay.
Overruled.
Okay. We play that video.
Check it out.
What Okay, Detective Shavon?
This is the DJ who is also, I believe, possibly a security guard too at some point, or some kind of security, but he's the DJ.
Is Morgan Brown in that?
She will be, yes. Morgan Brown is right here. And then you can see the DJ, I'm sorry, what? Morgan Brown is the lady right here, and then he's communicating with the DJ.
What second and minute is that on the video?
2:36 and 58 seconds.
2:36.
Want to go back?
You're gonna run it back for council.
I can't get it up where
Put the cursor in there.
This is the victim, deceased Morgan Brown.
Pause.
Yeah, right here. And then you're gonna see him, her like wave bye to the DJ, or, and then you'll see him interact with her. Come give me a hug. And then she just continues up.
Point of note here, did that video depict the DJ smoking inside the establishment? Is that what I saw?
It did, sir. Would you like to review for the crowd to see?
Council, do you want to see that again? If you could run it again one more time, so council can understand what this is. Detective Shavoni, did you later come across any other information that led you to believe that the DJ knew Morgan Brown outside of that video?
Yeah, when we were able to interview him, I don't know what day it was into the investigation, he advised that he knew the deceased victim. I'm not sure if he said from where she cut hair, but he knew who she was, and he said if he would have known, he would have let her in the box. But he said he didn't know her previously.
That's all I have for Detective Shavoni.
Thank you, sir. Counsel?
Thank you. Thank you, Detective Sharon. You were asked a question on direct examination about the shooting at SBM Lot. You, as part of your investigation on that night, you walked down, did you drive down Kilpatrick or did you walk down Kilpatrick?
Drive.
You drove. And Kilpatrick is a north-south street, yes?
Yes.
And SBM Line is located, would it be a fair statement to say, in a plaza adjacent to Kilpatrick, not far from 147th Street?
Yeah.
Okay. And you were in your vehicle and you were driving down Kilpatrick towards the scene. Is that fair to say?
North, yeah, please.
Okay. And you pulled your vehicle over?
Yeah, well,
I'm asking, you pulled your vehicle over?
I stopped in the middle of the street.
Okay. And you exited your vehicle, is that correct?
Yes.
Was there any other officer with you in your car?
In my car, no.
So it's just you?
Yes.
Okay. And you got out of the vehicle, your police car, and you walked towards the victim, is that right?
Yes.
And the victim was she laying on the street
Yes.
next to a vehicle?
Well, there's more than one victim.
I'm talking about the seat.
Okay. Yes.
The other shooting victim was close by,
Over there. Sit right next to him.
and this was how close to 146th Street?
It was south of it. Like, I can't tell you how many feet, I don't know, but it was between, it was just south of it.
Just south of 146th Street?
Correct.
So, would it be fair to say that the two victims were not adjacent to the SDN property line, correct?
There in the street.
That they were not adjacent to the SDN property line, correct?
Correct.
Now, I'm going to show you a report, Detective. Mr. Prosecutor, that was report 21 N0 27512. Yes, sir.
Village, if you want, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Have you seen what's marked as licensee 10? It's actually, Mr. Prosecutor, part of licensee 10 because licensee 10 is a group exhibit of the SBN police reports. And this is the first document that's part of that group exhibit, licensee exhibit 10. Ready? Do you recognize that police report?
Yep.
And how is it, sir, that you recognize that police report?
It's my initial report.
Did you author that report?
I did.
And the incident took place on October 31st, 2021 in the early morning hours, correct? Was it, I think you had testified, sir, it was around 2:35 a.m.?
When the car started letting out, yes.
And it was a few minutes after that that you went to the scene where the decedent was and the other victim?
Probably about 15.
About 2:50 a.m.?
Yeah.
Okay.
Quarter of an hour.
And, thank you, sir. And then the report that you authored, when did you write that report?
Probably a day or two. I don't know exact date that I wrote it.
There's no date on there, you don't indicate on your report the date and time that you wrote that report?
There might be time frame, but I don't know.
But you would have written the report when the facts and circumstances were fresh in your mind, correct?
Not necessarily.
Were the facts and circumstances fresh in your mind when you wrote that report? And you believe it was within a day or two of the incident, yes?
It would have been at some point when I was investigating the homicide, yes.
And being close to the date and time of the incident, it would have been important to you to accurately write the important facts in your report, correct?
Correct.
Because after all, this was a homicide, a murder, yes?
Yes.
this police report 21N027512 has nine pages, is that right?
Yes.
And you typed all of the information that's depicted in this report, 21N027512?
No.
Who else typed information into this report?
Detective Covey? Detective Covey?
Detective Cody? Was Detective Covey a responding officer?
He is a detective that was assisted with further investigation that night at some point.
Counselor, do you have a point?
Yes.
Can you get to it?
Yes, sir. So, sir, on page 3 of the report, there's a narrative. You see that?
Yes?
Did you write all of the narrative on page 3 of the report?
Yes.
And do you see the paragraph that starts with, "I was able to speak with Aquila Gomez-Denham"?
Yes?
And you see the third sentence that reads, "Understandably, Aquila was hysterical,
Yes?
and I was able to obtain, not verbatim, they left the bar and went to their vehicles."
Yes?
And by the word bar, you see the word SVN?
No.
Is that it?
That's it regarding that report.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. So, you're out of your vehicle, you walk towards the victims, and were not adjacent to the SVN property line. And you are close to 146th Street, correct?
Probably halfway between 146th Street and the alley behind 7 Mile.
Okay.
Somewhere in that.
So the shooting, fair to say, did not happen on SVN property.
Correct.
And the video that was shown to you, was that video that was provided to you by SVN?
It was provided to my partner, Detective Stubborn.
Right, sir, and my question is a little bit more specific. Was that video provided by SVN to Midlothian Police?
Yes.
So fair to say that SVN cooperated in providing you the video for this investigation, correct?
Correct.
No further questions.
Briefly follow up. Detective Schiavone, from the time that you were alerted that there was gunfire to the point in which you came upon the scene to find a 19-year-old girl bleeding out, dying in a residential neighborhood, how much time left
probably from the time that the second shots rang out that I was over, notified. Maybe a minute, and that's just because I was being blocked by because I couldn't get past it because of the vehicle on the side. So maybe a minute.
So when you're saying a minute, you're not using the minute description like someone say it was just a minute. You literally are saying within 60 seconds of the time that you were alerted to the gunfire, you came upon the scene of the victim who was dying or dead.
Approximately.
Is there any other bar within 60 seconds of where the victim who was seen in the video in the village of Midlothian?
There's a gaming place right across the street. I don't know if they consider that a bar or not, but there's a, on that other property.
Now, when you arrived at the scene, where exactly were, in terms of it was on Knox or Kilpatrick?
Where the victims were?
Yes.
On Kilpatrick.
On Kilpatrick. And what does that describe, that block where she was lying, dying or dead?
Coming off 147th Street, north of Kilpatrick, you're heading north to the right would be 7 Live is the closest establishment to 147th. Then it's Bellamia Restaurant, Burkott's Restaurant, then you have Knox. To the left is another strip mall. There's a bunch of businesses in there. If you go a little bit further, there is like right behind the other strip mall is like a storage unit place. And behind 7 Live, you have an alley and then houses. And then you have 167th Street.
How far was the nearest house to where the gunfire occurred, or where the victim was found?
Right off, just northeast of it. I mean, it's essentially the gentleman that lives in his property, or not on his property, but like right there.
Within feet?
Yeah.
You also testified that you were talking to one of the security guards at the time that you were alerted to the gunfire. Did he appear to be armed?
He didn't.
Objection that goes beyond the scope of my direct examination. Ask that that testimony be stricken.
Sustained.
I'll rest.
I have some rude questions here. The gaming place across the street, when you say across the street, Detective, where exactly are you talking about?
It's the plaza to the west, across from 7 Live, right off Kilpatrick. So if you're looking down, it's almost like a big U shape. You go down Kilpatrick, there's where 7, that's a straight strip mall, and then it's called Tiffany's Plaza. It's to the west, and then it kind of wraps around back up on 147.
No further questions.
Just one. Detective Schiavone, is there anything, did you come across any information whatsoever during the course of your investigation to indicate that Morgan Brown was at any other establishment other than SBM?
Objection that goes beyond the scope of my recross examination.
Sustained.
That's all I have.
Any more witnesses? Call next witness?
Yes. Okay, the village will call Officer Studlow.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Officer, would you state your name first?
Detective Studlow, Midlothian Police.
Detective Studlow, did you have an occasion to be on site at SBN Live on the evening of October 31st, 2021?
Yes, I did.
And how did you come upon being on that scene?
I was called out to assist with the investigation for this homicide.
Okay, and what?
Responded.
Okay, and what did you find upon your arrival?
When I arrived, I entered 7 Live, which was by that time cleared out, because I responded from home, so it had already cleared out by the time I got there. And the first thing I did was attempt to obtain the video evidence from the bar.
And who did you obtain that from?
I had assistance from Mr. Borders.
Would that be Andrew Borders,
Yes, it would
the
be.
purported owner of the establishment?
Yes.
And what did he do?
He provided me access to the system, and from initially they were unable to access the footage, but I had used that system prior under previous ownership, and the password had not changed. And I was able to recollect the password, and that's where we had access to the system. I was able to secure the video.
So the password from the establishment that was Cheers is the same password that SVN Live has
That is correct.
for the security system. Okay, and did you in fact have the opportunity to view the video?
Yes, I did.
And what relevant to the charges this evening did you view on the video?
I viewed multiple angles, including the one that we just watched. I was able to view exterior parking lot footage as well.
Okay, pursuant to the exterior of video, did you have the occasion to see employees of SVN Live?
Yes, I did.
And do you know who those employees are or what their positions were?
They were dressed as security personnel.
So you understood that they were security personnel for SVN Live?
Correct.
Did Mr. Borders confirm that with you?
Yes, he did.
Okay. Now, did you obtain that video for the Midlothian Police Department's investigation
Yes, I did.
from Mr. Borders?
Yes, I did.
Took it from the machine?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Do we have that? Okay. Detective Studlaw, I'm going to show you a video. Is this the video that you obtained?
Yes, it is.
I had a record of counsel if you want us to give them the timestamp.
Thank you, sir. Yes.
So we're at the 4-hour, 47-minute, and 25-second mark. This is the exterior camera.
And let's hold it right there for everyone's benefit. Detective Studlow, there's a truck there, and it's not obviously next to a curb on a street or a road. Where is that in proximity to SVN Live?
That brick wall is 7 line.
Is that the west wall?
That is the west wall of 7 line. Yes, sir.
Okay. So would that be, what that street be underneath the?
That street is Kilpatrick Avenue.
Okay, thank you. Here we go, 20 seconds left. Okay, based upon that video, Detective, were you able to determine what time that was?
Yes, I was.
Okay, and from the time stamp?
I can't say what the exact price is, but that is immediately after the shots were fired.
Okay, and, funny, yeah, if you can run it through. Yeah. Okay, were you able to determine who these individuals were in the video?
Yes. I did not speak to those individuals, but I did learn that they were part of the security of 7 line.
Did you look at this video with Andrew Borders, the the owner?
Yes, I did.
Did he concur?
Yes, sir. He also identified them as
Security from
Security.
SVN. Okay, now, if we can you see the right hand of that individual with the hat he's wearing?
Yes.
Okay, and what do you see in his right hand?
A firearm.
Based upon your experience as a police officer for how long?
25 years.
You get training in firearms?
Yes, sir.
As part of your training to identify the different kinds of firearms, and calibers?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And based upon your experience as 25 years as a police officer, is it your determination that he has a firearm in his right hand?
Yes.
Did Andrew Borders or anyone else ever tell you that there was licensed armed security guards on the premises?
No.
So any officer responding to the scene, would they have any way of knowing whether there was an armed security guard on the premises?
No.
And again, Mr. Borders never informed you that any of the security guards.
No.
And if we could just run that back one more time. Just a little bit, so. Now, taking you back to the evening of morning of October 31st, what happened after you left or after you viewed the video?
I brought the video back to include it with this investigation as evidence.
Marked it?
Yes, sir.
That's all I'm looking at from detectives.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Detective. So it's your testimony, sir, that the object in the right hand that's depicted on that video screen at timestamp is that 4/47/31/22? Yes. It's your testimony, sir, that the object depicted in the man's right hand is a firearm?
Yes, sir.
And I heard the foundational questions that were asked by the village prosecutor that you've got 25 years of experience in firearms training, is that right?
25 years of experience as a police officer.
Thank you. 25 years experience as a police officer. And based on your 25 years experience as a police officer, are you able to identify what type of weapon that is?
Other than it being a handgun?
Yes.
No.
And why are you not able to identify what type of weapon that is?
Because the video isn't clear enough to identify the actual type of weapon.
So the video is unclear as to what type of weapon it is.
As far as make and model and caliber, yes.
Now, since it's true, based off of your testimony, that the video is unclear as to make, model, and caliber, would it also be true that the video does not inform you whether in fact that's a real gun or a fake gun? Isn't that correct?
From the video alone? Sure, yes.
And you spoke with Mr. Andrew Borders about this specific video, yes?
Yes.
And was the identity of the individual holding the object in his right hand that you have testified just now, you're unsure if it's a real gun or a fake gun, was the identity of this individual provided to you at 4/47/31/22 timestamp?
I remember if he identified him at that time.
And sir, do you know the identity of that individual?
When I had a separate interview with the DJ playing that night, he identified him. I don't remember his name, but he identified him.
Thank you. And again, straight there. No further questions.
Very briefly, Officer Stedlow, if we could just run that back just a little bit, I'll just go ahead and ask the question and we'll wait for it to come up. As we just watched, the security guard that you've already testified that Andrew Borders admitted was his employee, and that time that video was taken was shortly after the shooting. Correct. Okay. Now,
Objection that mischaracterizes the testimony of the officer. I did not hear the officer testify that Mr. Borders said that this particular individual was an employee of SVN. One of the issues in this hearing, Your Honor, is whether or not the security guards are employees or independent contractors.
Officer, Detective Sudlow did state that
Yes.
he was informed that by the owner, purported owner of SVN Live, that they were employees.
The record speaks for itself. We can have a closing arguments, but I'm not going to argue over what the officer just testified to what's on the record. Now, as he's walking, right here. Okay. Good. There's the first one. While he's doing that, your experience as a police officer in your firearms training, you're able to decipher the difference between a revolver and an automatic handgun?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And just very quickly, a revolver has a chamber that revolves around the gun and doesn't need to be cocked or chambered, correct?
Correct.
And since we have to wait to speed this along, as with regards to an automatic handgun, at some point, would it be common for the person using it to reach over with the other hand and to chamber a round into an automatic gun?
Yes.
And by the way, would there be any need to chamber a pellet gun? I know you're not an expert in pellet guns or fake guns. I hold it coming up here. Right there, right there. Did you see that, officer?
I did.
Okay, and is that reaching over and touching the top of the gun and moving his hand over, would that be consistent with chambering around?
Yes.
That's all I have.
No questions.
Attorney Valdez, another witness?
Yes, the village calls Officer Kicker. And maybe this might be a good time to do some housekeeping stuff that'll save the procedure for the tribunal. An enormous amount of time. Council and I have stipulated to police reports. While the village maintains there is not relevancy with regard to the events that occurred at slap shots, the village is stipulating to council's exhibits with regard to the police reports, with regard to the slap shot, because he's informed me it is his intention and it is right to argue disparate consequences before here, and so the village will have no objections to the submission of them. Obviously, we have objections to the relevancy, but given that council is stipulating to the village's police reports regarding events at SVN Live, council, if you're up for it, what we can do is that at the close of the proceedings will allow you to, we can go through the exhibits to make sure that you got yours in, and vice versa.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Prosecutor. And further amplifying the agreement between my client and the village prosecutor regarding the stipulation to the police reports, they are not being offered for the truth of the matters asserted in the reports.
That's correct, that is correct. We're just trying to build a clean record for it.
Thank you,
Okay.
sir.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Okay, Officer Kicker, did you have an occasion to be on site for the October 31st, 2021 shooting at SVN Live?
Yes, it was.
Okay, and how were you alerted to the premise?
Heard the detective showing his radio traffic that there were shots fired in the area, which time I responded.
How long did it take you to get there?
I was in the area of 146 and Cicero, so less than a minute or two.
Less than a minute or two. And what was the scene that you found when you arrived?
Very sorry, Mr. Village Prosecutor. Just a housekeeping matter. Will there be other officers testifying?
No. This is the last one.
Thank you, sir.
So you may continue when you arrived?
Initially, I went to the immediate area and I was looking for any vehicles fleeing. We checked the area, really didn't go find anything, at which time I responded back to the scene to assist there.
Okay. And did you come upon the scene of the victim?
I did.
Could you describe the events yourself?
As I arrived, there was two females in the street, one holding the other. Appeared to have a gunshot wound to her arm and to her leg. And then there was a deceased female taking her last breath.
And did you later come to evidence that provided you that the identity of the person who died?
Yes, it did.
And how did you do that?
Saw Detective Sergeant Blunt there remove the ID from the purse.
So you witnessed the removal of the ID?
I did, and I saw it was a vertical ID or a sideways ID.
And did you see the name on the?
At that time, I did not. I heard him run the name through our dispatch, and I did see it in our in-house computer.
Okay. And what was the name of the victim?
Morgan Brown.
Okay. And did you get also the date of birth pursuant to that?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And was she 19 years old?
She was.
Okay. What happened after you arrived at the scene?
Paramedics transported the victims to area hospitals, and I assisted in securing the scene. And our detectives called out the South Florida Major Crimes Task Force and began investigating the homicide.
Now, you're familiar with SVN Live and the events that occur over there, correct?
Yes, I am.
And how is that so?
One of two supervisors on the night shift for the Midlothian Police Department.
Okay, and Did you have occasion to be one of the cars in the parking lot for SVN Live? The bar car, if you will?
Yes,
Okay. And did you have experience in other incidents that occurred?
yes, I have.
Okay, and did you put those in police reports?
Yes, I did, and so did the other officers on my shift.
Okay. And specifically, was that police reports 21MO24791, police report 21MO25134, 2150255450, 21MO25451, 21MO25665, and 21MO26738?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay, and pursuant to this proceeding today, did you submit a amalgamation of those police reports?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and those are the police reports that I forwarded to the opposing counsel, and we'll move those into evidence, but for the purpose of what the relevancy is and to what the events were, did you draft a note describing what the contents of those are? Because there's probably 60 or 70 pages, and rather than read them into the record, we'll just...
Yes, I did. I drafted a brief synopsis and gave it to the chief along with the reports.
Is that the synopsis right there?
Yes, it is.
Did you draft that?
Yes, I did.
Did you draft these notes specifically from the police reports?
I did.
And again, for the purpose of time, and for the record to reflect what those police reports are regarding, not for the matter of truth and matter asserted, could you just read what the police reports
Sure.
say?
Under report 21, M as in Mary, 024791, occurring October 2nd, 2021 at 2 a.m. There's a reckless driver, the female is driving.
I'm going to object at this time to any reading into the record of incidents not pertaining to October 31st, 2021, specifically because, Your Honor, we're here today pursuant to this notice of suspension order, charges and hearing, and in this notice of suspension order, charges and hearing, the only things that are identified as being at issue in these proceedings is one, underage consumption of alcohol on the premises on October 31st, 2021, and the other allegation is unlicensed armed security guards on October 31st, 2021. So any testimony about incidents on different dates, one, I think is a violation of my client's due process rights under the United States Constitution and the Illinois State Constitution. Two, we don't even have to go so far as the Constitution. We can just look at the village code. And in the village code, section 5-1-11, titled Suspension, Revocation of License or Permit, subsection D, says notice of hearing for revocation or suspension of the license or permit shall be given in writing, setting forth specifically the grounds of the complaint and the time and place of the hearing. I want to read that sentence again. Notice of the hearing for revocation or suspension of a license or permit shall be given in writing, setting forth specifically the grounds of the complaint and the time and place of the hearing. So any testimony from the officer about other incidents on other dates is a violation of section 5-1-11, subsection D of the Midlothian Village Code, and also violates my client's constitutional rights. We're entitled to notice in the charging document.
Council has submitted extensive police reports regarding slap shots to the point of disparate penalties. So therefore, it is the burden upon the village to demonstrate the full case for the commissioner with regard to the activities that have occurred there. To conclude that it's okay and relevant to put 18 or whatever number the police reports are with regard to slap shots as being relevant, but the several police reports with regard to SVN Live are not relevant. The basis for the suspension is the death of Morgan Brown, an underage individual drinking, as well as armed, unlicensed security guards. It remains that. But given that counsel has indicated he's going to make a disparate penalty argument, the village has the obligation to provide the background for the penalty that the village is pursuing. Now, if council wants to wait until the court, or excuse me, until the mayor makes a determination on revocation, and then we'll put on this evidence to demonstrate what the appropriate penalty should be, we can do that. But again, we have our burden to meet, and that's why we're presenting this evidence.
And Your Honor, not at all flippantly stated, but colloquially stated, apples and oranges. And the reason why I say, Your Honor, apples and oranges is because one issue deals with my client pursuant to your village code section 5-1-11, subsection D, is entitled to know what the specific grounds are in the complaint and the time and place of the hearing, as well as the constitutional protections that my client is entitled to. So when it comes to what the village can do in its case in chief regarding the liability for the two specific charges in the notice of hearing, the village is able to put on evidence, to put in documents, to put in photographs, to put in video regarding only the two charges in the notice of suspension order charges in hearing. When I, through the stipulation, put in the other police reports regarding slap shots and the other establishment, that doesn't go to the issue of liability, Your Honor. That goes to the issue of penalty. You have a slap shot situation where there's a murder on the premise at slap shots and their license is not revoked. And so we're talking about apples and oranges. It's a totally different argument, regarding what the village can put on.
Your objection is abstained. I don't need grandstanding.
Thank you.
Okay, and again, the purpose of the testimony is for the penalty phase in the event that the charges are sustained. And so we could wait till a determination is made and then call Officer Kickard back and he can go through all the stuff, but we're trying to save some time.
His objections.
Okay, all right. So go ahead and return to.
Yes, sir. October 2nd, 2021, at 2 a.m., the reckless driver, female is driving through the parking lot, leaving SVN Live at high rate of speed, with a second female seated on the passenger door ledge, hanging out of the car, narrowly missing the collision. One arrested for reckless driving, pertaining to 21 M as in Mary, 025134, on October 4th, 2021, at 1:52 hours. DUI driver advised she was leaving SVN Live, serious crash, one vehicle ended up in the front lawn of a home. Driver fled in another vehicle leaving SVN. 2 arrested, 1 for DUI, 1 for fleeing and eluding police. 21 M as in Mary, 025450, on October 8th, 2021, at 2:05 a.m., aggravated fleeing. Vehicles doing burnouts and driving recklessly on side streets pulled into SVN Live parking lot. Driver fled, reaching speeds in excess of 100 miles per hour in oncoming traffic on 147th Street. Pursuit immediately terminated. 21 M as in Mary, 025451, again on October 8th at 2:07 hours. Traffic crash occurred with a vehicle versus a pole and a tree. 3 vehicles leaving SVN observed at high rate of speed just prior. After one crash, occupants got into the other vehicles and fled from officers from both Midlothian and Posen police departments. 21 M as in Mary, 025665, on October 10th, 2021, at 2:48 hours. Arrest for aggravated speeding. Vehicle blew the stop sign, pulling out of SVN Live at high rate of speed off Kilpatrick Avenue. 1 arrested for aggravated speeding and driving while license suspended. 21 M as in Mary, 026738, on October 2nd, 2021, at 1:55 hours. DUI arrest, One arrested for DUI while leaving SVN Live after poor driving was observed by officers. That is it.
Now, officer, during the course of your experience with SVN Live, did you have an occasion to come in contact with the purported owner of the establishment, Mr. Andrew Border?
I'm not sure. Over a couple months, I've met a couple people that claim to be the owner of the establishment.
And did at any time any one of those owners express any interest in any of the events that you witnessed?
Yes, October 8th, the traffic crash at 147th Turner.
And what was that encounter?
A gentleman driving a Chrysler 300 approached Officer Wright on the scene, advising he was the owner, and asked if any of his people were involved in the crash.
Okay. But you don't know whether that was Andrew Borderson?
I do not.
Just someone who stated that they were the owner of that.
Correct. A security officer also arrived on the scene of that crash.
Okay. That's all.
Sir, what was your name, sir?
Sergeant Kicker, K-I-C-K-E-R-T.
Thank you, Sergeant. The October 2nd, 2021 incident, you've got a female was leaving SVN Live,
That's correct.
and what happened?
The second female came out the passenger side of her vehicle, sitting on the door ledge, and she accelerated rapidly through the parking lot, almost striking a second vehicle, and continued on 147th Street, the female hanging out of the car.
And you stopped that vehicle,
I did.
and you arrested those two females?
Just the driver.
And was the driver an employee of SVN?
She was not.
And officer, you mentioned an October 4th incident involving, do I have this correct, involving a DUI and an aggravated fleeing?
That's correct.
And you pulled over that vehicle?
I did not.
But you had no information that, strike that, there were, do you know if there were two individuals in that vehicle?
Just one for the offending vehicle.
There's just one?
The victim vehicle had two individuals.
Okay, so in the offending vehicle, there was just one person. And do you have any knowledge, sir, whether that one person on October 4th was an employee of SVN Live?
Not an employee, she was a customer.
The first October 8th incident you testified about, Sergeant, was that the one, sir, about an aggravated fleeing 100 miles an hour?
Yes, it was.
And forgive me, sir, did I hear you correctly that that vehicle drove into the parking lot of SVN?
That's correct.
So that vehicle had not driven out of the parking lot of SVN at a high rate of speed, correct?
That's correct.
It drove into SVN.
Drove in and then out. After the officer tried to stop, he was doing burnouts in the parking lot.
Okay. So if it drove into SVN, the occupants had not gone inside SVN, is that correct?
Not that we observed. That's correct.
And then, sir, Sergeant, you testified about another October 8th incident involving a traffic crash, is that right?
That's correct.
And were you the officer on scene for that?
I was the first one on scene, yes.
You were. And you spoke with an individual. What happened on that, in that incident?
Initially, as I arrived, individuals jumped out of the car that crashed and got in two other cars, and then they fled me at a high rate of speed. I terminated my pursuit. They returned back to the crash scene. That's when security from SVN Live arrived on scene.
So the offenders got away.
They did.
So you were not able to ascertain if is there any information that the two offenders were customers of SVN?
I saw them coming out of the area, and then the security officer who had that scene told me that all three vehicles were at their bar and had just left there, and that they wouldn't let them back again.
But you saw them coming out of the area, but you yourself did not see them coming out of SBN, correct?
Correct, I did not.
And sir, October 10th, there was a aggravated speeding going on, is that right?
That's correct.
Did you pull over that vehicle?
I did.
And how many offenders were in that vehicle?
2.
And I take it, sir, you questioned those offenders?
I did.
And were they employees of SVN?
They were not.
No further questions.
I have nothing on that. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Village Russell.
You have witnesses?
I do, Your Honor, but I'd like to talk to my clients for a few moments.
Sure. We'll take a short recess.
Thanks. Just to figure out if we can put on a case. Yes, sir. two witnesses. At this time, I call Jeff Eaton to the stand.
Sorry, what was the name?
Yes, Your Honor. Jeff Eaton.
Eaton?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Would you, proceed, sir?
Yes.
Would you state and spell your name for the record?
My name is Jeffrey Eaton, Jefffery, Eaton as in Nancy.
And how are you affiliated with the licensing SVN Live?
I was hired by the licensee approximately 3 weeks prior to the incident in question to come in initially as a consultant, hospitality consultant, entertainment consultant, and then was subsequently hired to be an interim manager until we were able to find a permanent general manager.
And have you acted in that capacity since SVN Live has been open?
I have.
Showing you what's been previously marked as licensee exhibit number 1. Do you recognize this document?
I do.
And how is it that you recognize this document?
It is posted on the entrance and exit at SVN Live.
And what is this document?
It is a notice that possession of any firearms is strictly prohibited on the premises.
And do you have any information whether SVN Live allows its security guards to carry weapons?
We do not permit anyone to carry weapons on the premises. So much so that in the past, so much so that we do conduct a physical search of persons entering the premises to ensure that they are not carrying weapons or any other contraband.
And showing you what's been marked as licensee exhibit number 2, do you recognize this document?
Yes, I did.
How is it that you recognize this document?
It is a business license sticker that is affixed to the entrance of SVN Live.
And is this copy of the business license sticker, was it issued by the Village of Midlothian?
Yes.
And then, Mr. Prosecutor, I guess we're just going to enter all these documents in afterwards.
We'll clean it up on all.
Thank you, sir. And on licensee exhibit number 2, the Village of Midlothian State of Illinois 2021 business license. Is this the business license for SVN Live?
It is.
Is there anything on the license that states that a minor may not be on the premise?
There is not.
And showing you, I'm going to go out of order, licensee exhibit number 5 and licensee exhibit number 6. Do you recognize these documents?
I do.
And how is it that you recognize licensee exhibits 5 and 6?
Exhibit number 5 is a physical menu of what we serve for food inside of SVN Live, and exhibit number 6 is actually a printout of the corresponding menu that is inside of our point of sale system.
And what are some of the items that are sold?
The burgers, chicken sandwiches, chicken wings, fish, shrimp, fries, a variety of other appetizers.
Okay. And showing you what's been marked as licensee exhibit number 7. Do you recognize that document?
I do.
How is it that you recognize that document?
This document is posted inside SVN Live. It is the license to sell alcoholic liquor.
Is that a copy of the current liquor license issued by the Village of Midlothian, Illinois?
It is.
And on this copy of that license, does it tell you what class license it is?
It does. In the top right-hand corner, Under the date, it says that it's a Class A license.
And is there anything on licensee exhibit number 7 that states a minor may not be on the premise?
There is not.
I don't know if you're the right witness for this, Mr. Eaton. Can I ask you questions about the liquor application and the business license application, or should I ask Mr. Borders those questions?
You may.
Okay. Showing you what's marked as licensee exhibit number 8. Do you recognize that document?
I do.
How is it that you recognize that document?
So anytime I've worked with any restaurant, bar, or entertainment venue, I've prior asked for their licensing to ensure that they were properly licensed. Because in being a manager on a premise like this, the onus falls on the management to make sure that we're operating in the right way. And so I'm very particular about asking what types of licenses the operators of the business have.
And what were the types of business activities that the operators here wanted to do and actually put on the business license application?
They submitted for a business license for a building of 5,000 square feet flat. They submitted for a health inspection. They also submitted for a license for business food sales. And then they were also applied for and charged for a yearly fire inspection.
And is licensee exhibit number 8 the business license application that was submitted to the Village of Midlothian by SVN Live?
There is the application for a business license amongst other documents that were submitted for licensing.
Okay. Those are all the questions I have for that exhibit. Showing you what I've marked as licensee exhibit number 9. Do you recognize that document?
I do.
And how is it, sir, that you recognize that document?
Again, in the execution of my duties as a manager, to make sure that I'm fully aware of exactly what it is that my clients or employers, how they're operating. I typically ask for information or documentation or licenses pertaining to how they're legally allowed to operate, so that I know how exactly to run their business without violating any laws.
And was that the liquor application submitted to the Village of Midlothian by SVN Live?
Contained within this group of documents is in fact the liquor license application as well as other documents.
Any other things that you would like to address to the mayor?
I would say that to the question of whether or not the deceased, Ms. Morgan Brown, was permitted or not to be on the premises, I did thoroughly review the village's ordinances with regards to operating a restaurant as well as operating a liquor license establishment, specifically for a Class A license. And there is nothing in that ordinance that speaks to whether or not an individual under the age of 21 is or is not permitted on the premises.
And you referenced an ordinance, sir. I'm showing you a copy of Village of Midlothian Ordinance 5-6-6. Is there any language in there that talks about Class A liquor licenses?
No, there's not. I'm sorry, did I misunderstand the question?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, say it
Take a
again.
look at subsection A.
Say it one more time. What was the question?
Is there anything in that ordinance section that discusses Class A liquor licenses?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. It's the
Okay.
very first line.
All right, and is there anything in the Village of Midlothian ordinance that states that a Class A liquor license holder may not have minors on the premise?
In this section of the ordinance and any other part that I've read, there is not.
No further questions?
Mr. Eden,
Yes.
you say you're a consultant for SVN Live,
I am now an employee of SVMI.
but at the time of the shooting, you were a consultant?
I was an employee of SVMI at that time as well.
At that time as well, okay. Was it your responsibility to check IDs at the door?
On that particular night, it was not.
Have you checked IDs at the door before?
Yes, I have.
And what is the purpose of checking an ID at the door?
So that it's a lot more efficient to check everyone's ID at the door to ensure that they're at least 21 years of age prior to going in and potentially drinking.
So it's your testimony that the bars that you consult or work for, that the sole purpose of checking IDs at the door is to make it easier for the bartenders to, what is the purpose of it?
That is not my testimony. I'm not referring to every bar that I've ever worked for. I'm only referring to the restaurant SVN Live. Any testimony that I made thus far is only about SVN Live and no other.
Therefore, can you tell me, is it SVN Live's policy that 16-year-olds can enter the bar at night?
I know SVN Live to be a restaurant that has a liquor license, just like TGI Fridays or a Bennigan's. And it is the policy of a TGI Fridays or a Bennigan's, or just like SVN Live, that a person under the age of 21, whether it be with or without an adult, or with or without a parent, is able to enter that premise to eat, but not to be served alcohol.
And to what time?
There is no time.
So was the kitchen open at 2 o'clock in the morning? What time does the kitchen close at SVN?
We typically close about 30 minutes prior to everyone being out of the building. But on that particular night, I was not in the building to know. Well,
So you don't know whether the restaurant was open?
I do know whether or not it was open because in the I'm going to estimate and say that in the week prior, there was a village inspector that came in to do an inspection of the premises, and at that time determined that the kitchen was unfit to be open, and told us specifically that we should not operate the kitchen, and that the remaining part of the building would still be allowed to be open, but there was no indication that we would stop having to allow anyone under the age of 21.
So it's your testimony that a restaurant, quote, restaurant bar that does not serve food can allow individuals into the premises until closing time under the age of 21.
Again, I do not reference SVN Live as a bar.
Well, we're talking about SVN Live. I'm asking you about SVN Live. I want to know, is it, for your experience and your managing of that facility, is it your position and your testimony that a 19-year-old, let's say someone named Morgan Brown, was legally allowed to enter the premises that does not serve food at 2 o'clock in the morning?
Well,
Is it yes or no? Is it the policy or not?
so I can't answer something when the statement that you made has points in it that do not apply to 7 Live. So it's a compounded question, and I can only answer one piece at a time.
Let me shorten it for you.
Sure.
Morgan Brown arrives at the bar. It is not serving food anymore. It's after midnight. The person at the door checks her ID, it says she's 19. Under Illinois law, is she allowed to enter the bar?
Objection calls for a legal conclusion.
Is it the policy of SVN Live to allow her into the bar?
Again, I don't reference the place as a bar. It is a restaurant. That's what they were licensed for. So SVN Live is a
So
bar that
what's-
has a liquor license.
What's the distinction between a restaurant bar and a Class A liquor license, based upon your experience?
Well, for the village of Midlothian, I'd have to look at the entire ordinance to be able to tell you what that distinction is.
So you don't know. You're managing a bar in the Village of Midlothian, you don't know the distinction between a Class A liquor license and a restaurant and bar when it comes to allowing underage people into the premises.
What I know is that SVN Live applied for a restaurant license, received a restaurant
Sir,
license.
you said
also
that,
applied
you said
for
that
a-
4 or 5 times. Let me try one more time. I'm going to be I'm not trying to hide the ball on you now. Let's say Morgan Brown arrives at the door at SVN Live. You've already had your restaurant shut down. She presents an ID that says she's 19 years old to the bouncer at the door. Is she allowed in?
Yes.
Maybe we've just concluded this proceeding on that answer alone.
She's allowed in for several reasons. Number one, the business is still licensed as a restaurant. Number two, just like any other venue that does not have a restriction on age for a liquor license establishment, we also have entertainment. She
Can-
might have been allowed.
Can I just clear this up?
Sure.
You are not allowed into a liquor establishment after the food is shut down if you're underage. So, be clear about that.
All right.
You're starting to ramble here. Can I ask a question? You said you're a manager
If I might ask a question as well?
of me?
Sure.
You said you were the manager?
That's correct.
For how long? For how long have you been a manager of SVN Life?
About 3 weeks prior to the incident in question, beginning of October.
And you have anything to do with promoting the events that go on at SVN Live?
Well, as the manager overall, I'm responsible for pretty much everything in the building.
And you're responsible for the advertisement for those events at your SVN Live?
To the extent that they're on our website or on our Facebook page, correct.
And you approve of what's being advertised for your business regarding the events you have there?
So there was no need for me to approve anything that was going on there at that time because everything that was going on there was happening prior to my arrival. So those things had already been approved.
Thank you. Do you have a question?
Yes. So if it's the case that a person should not be inside of an establishment with a Class A liquor license that is a restaurant when food stops, is that to say that at 1:15, if we decide to close the restaurant, we now have to put everyone out that's not 21 or older?
That is correct. State law. Anything else, Attorney?
Is there video gaming?
There is not.
There's not.
Currently, no.
Do you know who Charles Campbell is?
Yes, I did.
Who is Charles Campbell?
He is the person that initially introduced me to the SVN Live business that Andrew Waters is the owner of.
Charles Campbell is not the listed owner for SVN Live and the Illinois Secretary of State website?
Objection discussed beyond the scope of my direct examination.
All right, I'll ask a question then. I need some housekeeping clarification. You know Charles Campbell?
I did.
And what does he have to do with SVN Live?
He's the person that introduced me to SVN Live.
So you don't know what his status is with the bar, the business, the company?
According to state of Illinois and the liquor license, no, I don't.
He's listed as the owner of SVN Live with the state of Illinois. Do you know a Charles Burrell?
Charles Burrell and Charles Campbell are the same person.
Okay. Do you know Charles Collins?
No, I don't.
And of course we know Andrew. So here's my dilemma. I met with and gave a liquor license to the owner of SBN Live, Andrew Borders. Charles Campbell is listed as the owner of SBN Live with the state of Illinois. Charles Burrell, or Charles Campbell, changing names now, is purporting to be the owner on social media. So there's a big conflict here of who I gave a license to, purporting to be the owner. If Charles Campbell is the owner, he's the one that should have came and filled out the application for the liquor license, and I should have spoken to him, not Andrew Borders.
And I can't speak to any of that because I wasn't involved in any of that.
You were brought up as a witness, so I'm just, anything else?
With regard to security guards, are you familiar with how they're staffed and that they are present?
I'm familiar that they hire an employee host to be at the venue, yes.
Okay, but you don't have any knowledge of the security guard
The
hiring
security-
process?
The security team or the host team that was there prior to mine.
Okay, so you wouldn't know what the procedure is for determining whether security guards are certified under the Illinois Department of Professional Regulations to be armed on the premises? You don't have any knowledge?
Whether I know the Illinois Department of Professional Regulation requires you to be licensed to be armed on the premises, yes, I do know that. Whether or not that was the case in this particular instance, I also would be able to speak to that. On the premise, we do not allow anyone to be armed.
Do you frisk them?
Do we frisk who?
Your security guards?
No.
So then, were you here for the video that showed a security guard with a handgun in his hand?
I have no idea who that individual was.
All right, so you have
But I do
no
know that on our windows, it clearly has a sign that says that weapons are prohibited.
You also have a license that says you're not supposed to serve for anyone under the age of 21 too, correct?
It doesn't say that on our license.
It does?
Oh, you said serve? Correct.
Okay. All right. That's all I know.
Anything else, counsel? Come on, next witness, please.
I have actually no further witnesses.
And I'm not permitted to call someone.
Okay.
Okay. Then I guess we'll move on to closing arguments.
Okay. Well, on October 31st, actually, you know what? The village does have a witness to call since he's here. The village would call Andrew Borders, the owner. And that was because council said that he was going to call him, and so I didn't. You swear?
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Just state your name for the record, sir.
Andrew Borders.
Okay, and where are you from?
Currently, I live in Dalton, Midlothian.
Where did you grow up? Okay. How did you come across being involved with SBN Live, and specifically the property located at on 147th Street in the village of Midlothian?
DJ there numerous times.
You DJ'd there numerous times. And as the DJ
Before it was
before it was SBN Live, and what was it called then?
Cheers.
And how long did you DJ for that?
Off and on for about maybe 8 months.
Off and on for 8 months. In your position as a DJ, what did your responsibilities entail in terms of for the business owner?
I would revise and attend music. Sometimes host, promote events.
Okay. Do you know who the owner of you were working for at that time? Cheers.
I wasn't booked by the owner. I was booked primarily by promoters that was there. That's how I became constantly with them.
Okay, and who were those promoters?
6'5" Entertainment, Spotlight Lease, a few others. I just know that my name, my company name.
Did you know who Walter Nasolis was?
Objection, relevance.
Sustained.
Okay, where I'm going with this is that I want to know what his experience was in terms of a connection with Walter Nasolis of Comeback Corporation.
The presiding officer sustained my objection.
Okay, all right. So, how many times did you serve as a DJ at Cheers?
Objection, relevance.
All right. I'm trying to find out how, since the issue of who owns the place has been risen, I want to know how he came into ownership and what part he took in organizing events, as to whether he's truly an owner or whether he's just a promoter for both Cheers and SVN Live. That seems to be very relevant.
Overruled.
So how many times did you work as a DJ for Cheers?
I wouldn't know the number.
It was multiple times, fair enough?
A lot.
A lot. Okay. And as a DJ for Cheers, did you do any DJing for SVN Live?
Yeah.
Okay, so you for both, at Cheers and SVN Live, okay. As the DJ, did you promote these events?
Sometimes.
And again, I'm not trying to trip you up here. I'm trying to understand who fills the house? Who brings in the customers? Is it
Sometimes.
the DJ?
Sometimes
Are you the
yes,
draw? Are you the draw?
I'm the man.
Okay, and fair enough, fair enough. Were you successful in bringing numerous patrons into both Cheers?
Sometimes.
Sometimes it's tough out there. You got a lot of things to deal with. Okay, so, but is it fair to say that the person most responsible for marketing the event, determining what the event is going to be, and bringing people in is you as the DJ? Okay, and who would that be? The promoter. And you don't promote?
I mean, I promote events, but I'm not promoting.
Okay, now, you heard the local liquor commissioner's discussion of the ownership. Who is Charles Campbell?
My partner.
He's your partner?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a reason why your name is listed? Okay, let me ask you, is your name listed as an owner in the Secretary of State documents?
Yes, I believe so. Yes.
Okay, were you the DJ on January 29, 2021 for Cheers?
Objection, relevance.
Sustained. Get to the point.
It's not your first experience at the 4660 147th Street location with major incidents in the parking lot, is it, Mr. Borges?
No.
And what other kind of serious incidents occurred while you were on site?
Objection, relevance. The notice of suspension order, charges and hearing refer only to an allegation of underage consumption of alcohol on premise and unlicensed armed security guards.
Sustained.
Mr. Borders, are you responsible for checking IDs at the front door of SVN Live?
No.
With,
I'm doorman.
are you responsible for hiring security?
I'm not the only person that hires.
Uh, That may be, I'm just, are you partially responsible? Do you, I'm asking you directly, do you hire security for SVN
I
Live?
hire the firm.
Okay. Are those security guards armed?
No, sir.
You've been sitting here during this proceedings. Were the two gentlemen that you saw in the video your security guards?
I recognize that, I know I recognize one.
Is he the one that had the gun?
Objection. The officer who testified about what was in the hand of the skinny guy depicted in the video, that officer was, the sergeant was unable to testify whether or not that was a real gun. In fact, he testified that he doesn't know if that gun was real or if it was fake.
That's a stretch.
That's not a stretch, that's exactly what the officer testified to.
Is that-
Everybody heard that.
So, is that an objection?
Yes,
So what is the basis of the objection?
mischaracterization of the testimony.
Okay. Did you see the video of your security guards outside SVN Live on October 31st when the hours were running?
Yes.
Did you see a weapon in the right hand in that video of one of your security guards?
I didn't, I couldn't tell them.
You couldn't tell that weapon. Do you screen your security guards for weapons?
I hire a firm, I speak to one person.
Okay. So then you wouldn't know whether you have armed security guards on the premise.
I know my expectations and I know what I'm asking of the person and his firm.
Okay, so to answer the question directly, you do not have armed security guards certified by the Department of Professional Regulations.
We do not allow armed security.
That's all the village.
So, you applied for the liquor application?
Yes.
And, in fact, when did SVN Live open?
I believe it was, first day open was August 16th, or August 14th, somewhere, August 16th.
2021?
Yeah.
Okay. And prior to opening, did you have a meeting with His Honor, the mayor?
Yes, and chief police.
Okay. And did that meeting take place on or about the month of July?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did you have a conversation with the mayor?
Yes, yes.
And what? And that was in the month of July of 2021. And what was the substance of that conversation?
Basically, the mayor asked me, he made it very clear that he didn't want any nonsense in the local. He asked me what my vision was. I told him what my vision was, and I spoke to him and the police chief. I let him know what I wanted to do, and he let me know that he doesn't want a nightclub in the local. I don't want another club in the local.
And as a result, on your business license application, you applied for a bar and grill?
Correct, correct.
And on the night in question, pertaining to the notice of suspension order, charges, and hearing, October 31st, 2021, did you authorize any security guard to carry a weapon
No, sir.
at SVN Mall?
No, sir.
Did you have knowledge that any security guard had a gun on October 31st, 2021?
No, sir.
Did you instruct any host or security, rephrase, did you instruct any host or security officer to respond to shots fired on October 31st, 2021?
No, sir.
There's been testimony that the security guards were employees of yours, and specifically any security that was there on October 31st, 2021. Do you recall hearing that testimony?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I just heard you testify that you hired a firm, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And the firm has people working for it, is that correct?
Yes.
And those persons provide hosting and security for you?
Correct.
And those people are not employees of yours, is that right?
Correct.
They are independent contractors?
Yes.
And you didn't authorize anyone to go out and respond to any shots fired, is that right?
No, I didn't.
Did you know if anyone went out with a gun to respond to shots fired on October 31st, 2021?
No, sir.
You went out that night of October 31st, 2021, is that right?
Yes.
And that was after you left the premises?
I'm sorry?
You exited the premises?
Yes.
About what time?
I'll probably say about 2:40, 2:45. What time? Somewhere in there.
Just so the record's clear. In the morning?
In the morning,
All
yeah.
right. And where'd you go?
Are you asking me?
Where did you go at 2:40 a.m. that morning?
I went to the front patio.
And then what did you do?
I asked, did anybody hear any shots?
And then what happened?
They said, yeah, it was around the corner.
And what did you do?
I walked around the corner.
And then what did you do?
I was directed that there was a girl down the street.
Down the street? How far down the street?
Closer to the house on the corner.
That close to 146th Street?
About maybe 25 feet from the stop sign.
That stop sign's 146th Street?
Correct. Correct.
And the street that you were walking down was Kilpatrick? And what did you see?
When I got up close, I saw a young lady on the ground, bleeding, and she was being held by another young lady, and you can see that she was struck by bullets also.
Was this adjacent to SVN property?
It was further down, much further down. It was closer to the stop sign than it would be.
Of 146th Street and Kilpatrick.
Yes.
And when you saw what did you do next?
I ran to hopefully, lend a hand, help. And that's one of the times police was pulled up.
And did any officers come up to you at that point?
The officer, I think he was pretty much asking people to give us some more. So it kind of just messed me up a little bit. So I went back inside and I saw one of the officers. I was telling them telling them the direction they need to go through and where everything was going on. I went back in.
Were you carrying a weapon that night?
No, sir.
Did you have a weapon on your person when you approached the two victims?
No.
Did you, other than police officers, did you see any security with weapons at the scene?
No.
And there were police officers at the scene?
Yes.
So if the police officers would have seen security with weapons, you would have seen that?
Yeah, sure. Yes.
Did in the investigation that followed by the Midlothian police, were you interviewed? Do you remember being interviewed?
No, I wasn't interviewed by
Did you talk to anybody at the police?
the night of.
Sure, the night of.
Yeah.
Okay. And did you speak to a Midlothian police officer?
I spoke to Officer Kobe and Stella.
Okay. And do you remember what you said?
I told them whatever they needed. Like, I told them let's go upstairs and see if we can get the camera.
And did you provide them with the cameras
Yes.
and with the video?
Yes.
Cooperated?
So, yes.
Those are all the questions.
Mr. Boyer, when you had that meeting with the mayor, did you inform him that you weren't going to be responsible for hiring security guards?
Objection, it goes beyond.
No, it doesn't. It's the first thing you opened with, counsel. You wanted to discuss what kind of meeting you had with the mayor, and then you went on extensively with regard to the conversation they had that he testified.
Overruled.
Did you have a conversation with the mayor stating that you were not in charge of hiring security guards?
No, I told the mayor that I was hiring a firm, and I would have a great security firm and make sure that he kept the riffraff out the door.
Okay, and is it your statement that the ultimate responsibility as to whether you have unlicensed security guards is on your firm and not you?
Repeat that.
Is it your position that the responsibility, the ultimate responsibility as to whether there are armed, unlicensed guards in your bar is not yours, but a consulting company
My
or...
responsibility is to convey what I want to the owner of that firm, and I expect him to do so.
Okay, so is that a yes? It is ultimately your responsibility?
I'm not the manager of the security firm. I tell the owner.
Sir, I didn't ask you if you're the manager of the security firm, and this is an important question. I want to know, is it your position as the purported owner of SBN Live, is it your understanding that it's not your responsibility to make sure
I'm
that you're...
responsible for everything going on. So,
You heard the testimony of Mr. Eaton in his position that your bar, when the kitchen is closed at 2 o'clock in the morning, can allow in 19-year-old individuals based upon their ID. Is that your position?
Objection, it goes beyond the scope of my cross.
We're getting to the responsibility of the owners with regard to, he testified, this is the kind of place he runs, and who's responsible for what. So I want to know, are you responsible for the ID policy?
I'd like a ruling on my objection.
I'll allow it, but I think we need to...
I just have a few more. Because we need to know. Is it your position that 19-year-old individuals are allowed to enter the premises of SBN Live at 2 o'clock in the morning when the kitchen is closed?
I totally disagree. Me personally, I don't allow, and I would tell my doorman to do that.
Okay, I appreciate your opinion. That's all.
All right. So I got some questions. You remember me? We had a nice chat in the mayor's office, and Chief Delaney. We can't afford nice stuff here. So you remember the meeting well? You remember Chief Delaney and I talking to you about
Yes.
the business model, so to speak, of the previous business that...
Mr. Mayor, I say this with great humility and respect to you, sir. I would object to you asking questions of the witness since you are the judge or the presiding officer.
You brought it up.
It's my right to bring up that topic, but I do believe that because you are the quote-unquote judge of this proceeding, it would be inappropriate for you to ask questions of the witness. Therefore, I respectfully, Mr. Mayor, object.
You can ask questions. I believe the tribunal can ask questions of clarification. Yes, to the testimony.
Then I'll make a statement. Mr. Borders knows exactly what we discussed at that meeting. He knows exactly what he told me his business model was going to be for the business based on what happened with the prior business. And Mr. Border is very clear on what I told him would happen if there was any incidences at this new business. I'm done with my statement. Anything else for closing arguments?
Closing arguments, yes. Well, I agree. One thing I agree with co-counsel, excuse me, with opposing counsels, and that is that on the relevant inquiry for today is whether there was a underage individual drinking on the premises at SBN Live on October 31st. It is also whether there were armed, unlicensed security guards on the premises. I think the evidence is overwhelming that both of those situations involved. And certainly, an owner can claim they had no knowledge of this. But as you recall by the video evidence, the DJ knew Morgan Brown, knew she was in the facility. The bar has had an enormous amount of problems, which we have not brought up today other than for the purpose of discussing what the sanctions should be. Morgan Brown was 19 years old. We all have made mistakes when we were young. I wouldn't be here if it cost me my life for sneaking into a bar when I was 19 years old. But that's not the issue. The issue is, what do you do with a business liquor license holder when, as a result of allowing a 19-year-old girl into your establishment, she goes out into the community on a residential block and gets murdered in the middle of the street with bullets flying into a community with people whose homes are literally feet away from where the gunfire occurred. The ramifications of this failing of Andrew Borders and SBN Live are catastrophic. It's catastrophic. A young girl died. She's dead because she made a phone call, she got escorted to the front, she was allowed in, and because she wasn't carded, or if she was carded, she was allowed in anyway. And I think the evidence is very clear that the misunderstanding of what the law is, the liquor law is, what the village code says with regard to allowing 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds into a liquor license establishment when there is no restaurant operating. Till this day, after the death of this woman, they still have some confusion as to whether they should allow 19-year-olds into their bar. The responsibility of the local liquor commissioner is extraordinary, and that is why the state statute provides him pretty much unbridled authority. Got to be due process, got to have a rational, reasonable basis to give the ultimate penalty, which is the revocation of a liquor license. Well, I think this situation demonstrates why the legislature put that authority in your hands, Mayor. It's because it rises to the level of the most important thing that the residents of Midlothian have to face, and that is that they live behind this bar, around this bar, and bullets are flying into the community on a regular basis, repeatedly. And someone ended up dying. Based upon that, and based upon the fact that I think the owners knew the situation, the kind of clientele that was being brought into SBN Live on a regular basis, is why they had to hire armed guards, guys with guns. I won't go into the history of unlicensed armed officers in a liquor establishment with an active shooter, except to say there's a reason why that isn't lawful, and that is the same reason that this bar has to be shut down permanently. This bar was a murder ready to happen. This bar was open for a short period of time and had multiple events that led up to the death of Miss Brown. We are fortunate that none of those bullets went into the residential homes of the people who lived on Knox or Kilpatrick. We're fortunate that we don't have two homicides, because the girlfriend who came to her aid and watched her bleed out and die, was also wounded with multiple shots. Mr. Mayor, I can't imagine any other facts that are more compelling for the permanent revocation of SVN's life. For the safety of the community, the residents, the patrons, the visitors of Midlothian, the only appropriate penalty is revocation of license.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, council. So I come back to what are the charges, which I think govern these proceedings. And the charges in the notice of suspension order, charges and hearing, there's two charges. One, underage consumption of alcohol on the premises. So notwithstanding the village prosecutor's eloquent arguments, the issue regarding charge one is not whether it was permissible or not for a 19-year-old to be on the premise. It's not what the charge says. The charge, Your Honor, says underage consumption of what? Pepsi? Coca-Cola? Orange juice? No. Charge says underage consumption of alcohol on premise. So, with great respect to the village prosecutor, whether or not there's a 19-year-old on the premise, that's not the charge. The question is, was there underage consumption of alcohol on the premise? So then you have to ask yourself, Mr. Mayor, did you hear any evidence of underage consumption of what? Orange juice? Coca-Cola? Pepsi? No. Charge says underage consumption of alcohol on the premises. Well, what did the officers testify to? The only officer I heard testifying about drinking inside the premises was Detective Chavon. And he testified regarding the 19-year-old. He testified that there was drinking inside the premise. And by premise, we'll concede he's talking about SDN Live. But he said it was reported to him there was drinking inside by the 19-year-old. Okay? Listen to the transcript carefully. Listen to what that detective testified to about the drinking inside, and you will not, with your ears, hear him say what the 19-year-old, if in fact she was there, was drinking. We don't know if she was drinking vodka. We don't know if she was drinking champagne. We don't know if she was drinking Hennessy. We don't know if she was drinking orange juice. We don't know if she was drinking Coca-Cola. We don't know if she was drinking Dr. Pepper. I don't know if she was drinking apple juice. You have to go on what the evidence was put on in front of you, and if you listen to that transcript, you'll hear Detective Chavon talk about drinking inside. But there is no testimony, zero testimony about what, God rest her soul, the decedent was drinking. So therefore, because there is zero evidence, not a scintilla of evidence, no evidence, you are duty bound, sir, to find no liability on underage consumption of alcohol on premises, which was the first charge. Moving on, sir, to the second charge in the notice of suspension order, charges, and hearing. The second charge, Your Honor, is unlicensed armed security guards. On the question of unlicensed, I don't believe I heard testimony from any of the officers regarding whether they interviewed any host, any security guard, whether there was any investigation about licensure. And if there is no testimony from any of the officers or witnesses about whether or not there's licensure, that there by itself means that that charge has not been met, has not been sustained. But let's look at the second word in the charge, right? Charge number 2 says unlicensed armed security guards. And I'm going to focus on the word armed. Detective Studler testified he can't tell if, in fact, Your Honor believes that there was a gun in the hand of the skinny man. By the way, Judge, the reason why no disrespect to the 2 individuals in the video. I refer to one as skinny, and I'll refer to one as overweight. Only vis-a-vis each other. It appears that the skinny person was smoking a cigarette, and there's something in the hand of the skinny. Strike it. The overweight individual is smoking a cigarette, and there's something inside the hand of the skinny individual. And you heard the testimony right in front of you from, I apologize, I remember his name, Detective Studler. He can't tell if it's a real gun or a fake gun. Therefore, charge number 2, unlicensed armed security guards, is not sustained. If, however, you disagree with me, Your Honor, and you believe that any one of the 2 charges have been sustained, the next question then becomes, what should the penalty be? I think it's relevant, Your Honor, that Detective Chavone, I'm addressing the issue of penalty, sir. I think it's relevant that Detective Chavone testifies that he went down Kilpatrick, and in sum and substance regarding his testimony, he's near 146th Street. I think I heard him testify, sir, that this was not adjacent to SDN property. And I heard the village prosecutor eloquently argue about bullets flying near residential homes. So the point being, this is not an instance where the incident takes place on SDN property. And I think that's a relevant point when it comes to penalty. And you heard some testimony from an officer. He was over my objection. He was testifying about different incidents not involving October 31 in an effort to persuade his honor about what penalty should be. The officer testified, it was Sergeant Kickert. He testified about an incident on October 2nd, female leaving SDN Live, second accelerating rapidly. I mean, that person was not an SDN employee. Same thing regarding the October 4th incident that Sergeant Kicker testified about, not an employee of SVN. Regarding the October 8th incident, aggravated fleeing, he was not able to testify that this person had been inside SVN. On one of the incidents, one of the aggravated fleeing charges, the offender was actually driving at an excessive rate of speed into SVN, not somebody who was a customer that was coming out of SVN. In sum and substance, regarding each of the incidents that Sergeant Kicker testified about, not worthy of being the typical things that someone in your position, Your Honor, would deem as aggravation factors to increase penalty. Usually, it's been my experience, sir, as a liquor license lawyer since 2002, that typically someone in your stead would look at what was the prior disciplinary history of the licensee when figuring out aggravating factors towards penalty. And I didn't hear any evidence put into the record of any prior disciplinary history. You know, on the issue of revocation or not, one, the charges have not been sustained. But if you disagree with me, Your Honor, and you believe that some penalty should be issued, slap shots as the murder of Tyree Riles on its premise in the parking lot on February 20th, 2021. And I know that, by the way, just so you know, Judge, and I want to clear on the record, I respect the village prosecutor, and I believe he's been fair to me. But humbly stated, notwithstanding what the village prosecutor said, who I find to be a very fair and reasonable man, I did not receive any order or fine or suspension order or revocation order regarding slap shots. In fact, the decision that was given to me that involves slap shots, the date of the order, as you remember, Judge, happened before the murder of Mr. Tyree Riles. But the village prosecutor, being a gentleman, and I appreciate him being fair and honest, he did advise the court that slap shots regarding the murder of Tyree Riles, where that murder, sir, happened in the premise, in the parking lot, not down the block, in the premise, in the parking lot. That, thank you, Mr. Village Prosecutor, for your honesty and your fairness. The village prosecutor advised the court that slap shots regarding that murder of Tyree Riles received a 2-week suspension and a fine. So on the question of disparate consequences, while on the one hand, I have argued persuasively, sir, that the charges, 2 charges, have not been sustained. Listen to the transcript. On the other hand, sir, you respectfully disagree with me, and you believe that the charges have been sustained, either 1 or 2 or both. And on the issue of penalty, to say revocation, in light of what's going on with slap shots, I think would be a disparate consequence for my client. I think that revocation would be unreasonable, and I would respectfully remind His Honor, while the 2 lawyers have stipulated regarding the police reports that will be put into evidence, that they're not being offered for the truth of the matters asserted. Yet still, regarding slap shots, we've got a May 21st, 18 incident where the code was fight, riot, brawl. June 16, 2018, disturbance. June 24, 2018, safety hazard in details. By the way, this could be both slap shots and cheers. March 22nd, 19, that was police report 6541, battery. August 2nd, 2019, police report ending in 8455, safety hazard. October 7th, 2019, police report ending 4610, car park citations. January 16, 2020, police report ending in 1438, criminal trespass. March 8, 2020, police report ending in 7000, battery. September 27, 2020, disturbance, police report ending in 4414. December 6, 2020, disturbance, police report ending in 0379. Of course, the February 20th, 2021 murder of Tyree Riles at the Slapshots location, police report 4564. March 13th, 2021, disturbance.
Counsel, you can stop. I get the police reports every day.
Yes, sir. So, sorry, sir. So with that in mind, it would be unfair and unreasonable for Your Honor to revoke this license in light of what happened at Slapshots on their premise, versus the incident here. Thank you.
I get last time.
Well, I get the last word.
Well, in response to the burden of proof raised by co-counsel, this is an administrative proceeding. The burden of proof is not beyond a reasonable doubt. It is simply more likely than not. And all I can say is that the assertion that a security guard apparently chamber loading a pellet gun, that just doesn't meet, that clearly meets the burden that that was a gun. The testimony of Detective Schiavone, and he remembers it vividly because he watched a 19-year-old girl bleed out and die right before him, or having just recently died before him. He remembers the statements of her friend that they had been drinking. Now, in a criminal case, hopefully soon, the individual that created this havoc in the community, the shooter, at that trial, an autopsy will be presented. And at that time, we will have the evidence in that proceeding with regard to the alcohol content of the victim. That's coming, and the village certainly will forward that information. But today, because of the extreme urgency of the situation at that bar, the testimony of Detective Schiavone is sufficient to meet that burden of proof. And finally, I would just say this. In the liquor license defense bin, the every dog gets one bite is one of the more frequently used and compelling arguments. However, what do you do when there are repeated dogs barking in every corner of your municipality in which guns and gunfire and death is occurring on a regular basis in the village? Certainly, the mayor has to do something. That's 2 fatalities and 2 shootings in just over 16 months, all coming from bars in the village of Midlothian. So, do we wait for the next bar to have a murder, and then the corner bar next to it to have a murder? Or does the liquor commissioner have a responsibility to stop the carnage now? If there was another way that we could have some penalty that would assure the residents of Midlothian that there won't be more bullets flying around on Knox and Kilpatrick because it is a unique situation as to where that bar is, then maybe we can entertain it. But what is very obvious is that the mayor, if the liquor commissioner does not take action now, someone else is going to die.
I want to thank both counselors and everyone in the audience. It's been a lengthy evening, but it was cordial, quiet, never entertaining when you get 2 lawyers in the same room. But I have a lot to think about, and I'm not going to be able to make a decision here tonight. I like to weigh all the evidence, listen to it again, and I will make sure that I have a ruling to prosecutor and you within 5 days.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So at this time, I'm closing the hearing.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.